We are in the early stages of an economic restructuring. Digital technology is racing ahead, and as intelligent machines improve, they are successfully automating a vast swath of low-skill logistical tasks. Simultaneously, these same tools are creating massive leverage for those capable of solving complex problems. Thriving in this environment requires the ability to quickly master hard things and the capacity to produce at an elite, irreplicable level. This graph maps the bimodal trajectory of the modern labor market. The middle is hollowing out. We are left with one path dropping toward zero, representing skills that are easily automated, and another path accelerating upward, representing high-skilled workers. At the top tier of this curve, we find individuals who can tease valuable results out of increasingly complex systems. Statistical forecaster Nate Silver provides a clear example. His capacity to feed data into large databases and extract accurate Monte Carlo simulations makes him uniquely valuable in an information-dense economy. The bottom tier of this curve captures a class of workers whose daily output consists of sending routine emails, scheduling, and moving data between digital folders. If a task can be easily documented, it can be outsourced or written into a software script. A single cognitive state separates these two tiers, the capacity for deep work. Developing the capacity for unbroken concentration is a mechanical requirement for professional survival in an information economy. Deep work describes professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to the edge of your current capacity. These efforts create new value, improve underlying skills, and are remarkably hard to copy. The counterweight to this is shallow work. These are the non-cognitively demanding, logistical tasks that dictate the modern workday, answering immediate messages, attending status meetings, and managing inboxes. They create little new value and are easily replicated by others. To understand why deep work is mandatory for mastering hard skills, we have to look at the neurology of learning. When you focus intensely on a specific task, you force a specific neural circuit to fire repeatedly. This isolation triggers the production of myelin, a layer of fatty tissue that wraps around the neurons, cementing the circuit and allowing it to fire faster and cleaner. Constant interruption actively prevents this process. If you attempt to learn a complex new skill while simultaneously checking a messaging feed, you are context switching. You fire too many circuits haphazardly, failing to isolate the specific group of neurons required to trigger useful myelination. This creates a paradox for the modern knowledge worker. They experience the genuine exhaustion of constant, frantic busyness, yet by spending their days in a state of fragmented attention, they are systematically degrading their own capacity to produce real value. Recognizing this problem often leads people to rely on sheer willpower to resist digital distractions. But decades of research confirm that willpower is a finite, easily depleted daily resource. Relying on motivation to overcome an actively distracting corporate environment is a structural failure. Because willpower is finite and the neurological requirement for unbroken focus is absolute, individuals must replace motivation with engineered scheduling systems. To bypass the limits of willpower, we must look at how we structure our days. This blank calendar grade represents a baseline schedule. To guarantee deep work occurs, you must adopt a specific depth philosophy. The monastic philosophy ruthlessly eliminates all shallow obligations. This isolation is common among those whose primary professional obligation is to think big thoughts. Theoretical physicist Peter Higgs, for example, worked in such disconnected isolation that journalists couldn't find him after he won the Nobel Prize. For those who cannot vanish entirely, there is the bimodal philosophy. You dedicate clearly defined stretches, days or weeks at a time, entirely to depth, leaving the rest of the schedule open to standard logistical tasks. The psychiatrist Carl Jung utilized this method to generate the groundbreaking concepts required to outwit his mentor Sigmund Freud. Jung regularly retreated to a stone tower in the woods for days of intense writing, before returning to Zurich to manage his busy clinical practice. The rhythmic philosophy transforms deep work into a daily habit, removing scheduling friction by locking time and place. Finally, the journalistic philosophy involves rapidly switching into deep mode whenever a gap opens in a crowded schedule. Bill Gates frequently leveraged a variation of this isolation amidst chaos during his time running Microsoft, carving out isolated think weeks to rapidly process information and pivot the company's entire strategy toward the emerging internet. The specific philosophy you choose matters less than the fact that you have one. The ultimate objective here is to structurally barricade your schedule against your brain's default desire for cheap, constant digital distraction. Choosing a schedule is the strategy. Factually doing the work requires execution. To ensure deep work happens, we have to adapt corporate execution frameworks, designed for large businesses, directly to our personal cognitive output. Business strategy distinguishes between two types of metrics. Lag measures are the final results you cannot immediately control, like the number of academic papers you publish. Lead measures, by contrast, track the actionable, daily behaviors that drive success. This equation defines the ultimate lead measure for the modern knowledge worker. To increase your high-quality output, you must track the raw number of hours you successfully spend in a state of intense, unbroken deep work. To free up those hours, you have to audit your current schedule and identify exactly what is destroying your time. This requires a ruthless assessment of every task you perform. Use this simple thought experiment. Ask yourself how long to train a smart, recent college graduate to complete a specific task. If they could learn to execute it in a few months, the task does not leverage your unique, hard-won expertise. It is shallow work, and it must be minimized. To prevent these trivial tasks from creeping back in, you must adopt strict time blocking. This means scheduling every single minute of your workday in advance. It forces you off autopilot, demanding intentionality for every hour you spend at a desk. When you rigorously quantify the depth of your tasks and block your time, you are forced into a harsh confrontation with reality. It quickly reveals exactly how little irreplaceable value you are actually producing during an 8-hour shift of constant busyness. This gauge illustrates a biological reality of elite output. Cognitive capacity is strictly finite. Extensive studies on deliberate practice show that even experts max out their ability to sustain true deep work at roughly 4 hours per day. Because of this biological ceiling, attempting to cram more work into the evening yields sharply diminishing returns. Once your capacity for depth is exhausted, continuing to work traps you in a cycle of low-value, shallow tasks, executed at a slow, low-energy pace. Therefore, elite performance requires a strict shutdown ritual. This is an engineered mechanism executed at the end of the workday to completely sever your attention from all professional cognition. This hard stop is not a reduction in productivity, it is a shift in processing. Unconscious thought theory demonstrates that forcibly resting your conscious brain allows your unconscious networks to take over, successfully parsing and sorting complex professional challenges in the background. Rigorous evening downtime is functionally required to recharge your directed attention reserves. Without it, you cannot muster the intense concentration required for the next day's deep work sprint. Navigating the information economy requires a choice. You can default to the superficial busyness and fragmented attention demanded by modern network tools, or you can embrace the uncompromising rigor of deep work as the primary mechanism for generating value in a distracted world.